These days, I'm much more confident at using magic to heal people and such.
Hironobu Sakaguchi, the father of Final Fantasy, has led his own studio Mistwalker for around 2 decades now. However, their games haven't really been easily accessible to many RPG fans. After Mistwalker's debut with Blue Dragon on the Xbox, the studio mostly focused on handheld and mobile games, including its latest release, Fantasian. Now, 3 years after Fantasian's Apple Arcade exclusivity, this overlooked RPG is finally expanding to consoles and PC as Fantasian Neo Dimension, thanks to Square Enix. Having missed its initial release due to platform exclusivity, I've been excited to finally try it out, especially with the addition of full voice acting. And after playing through this story-focused adventure, Fantasian Neo Dimension has become one of the best turn-based RPGs that I've ever played, even if the Switch performance could be a little better.
Sorry, this room is off limits to... Ah!
You look familiar.
What?
Fantasian Neo Dimension follows Leo, a young man who wakes up in a machine-filled world with amnesia. You know, traditional JRPG stuff. Much of the adventure involves him retracing his steps and figuring out who he is, eventually leading to much higher stakes with serious implications. Although Leo is a strong protagonist whose amnesia is explored in memorable and emotional ways, he's not the only star of the show. Along the way, he teams up with several friendly faces, including the princess of a prominent kingdom, the captain of a respected vessel, and a skilled mage unaware of her own origins. Every party member in Fantasian Neo Dimension is wonderfully endearing, with great dynamics and compelling motivations that make their interactions even better. Additionally, the voice acting here is simply superb, and easily one of the best English dubs that I've ever heard.
I'm fancy. What a storm! A real once-a-century squall. Twice a century, tops.
Captain, you can't possibly manage alone.
The rest of my crew's got their hands full taking care of the passengers. Speaking of hands, though, suppose I could use a few.
Not only is the casting spot on, but the delivery of every significant character's lines is excellent. Honestly, the entire playable cast is outstanding in their English dub performances. I couldn't even pick a favorite. The dub alone makes me glad I waited for this updated release, so I can't imagine experiencing these scenes without it. Still, the voice acting alone doesn't make the narrative engaging. The continually evolving plot and writing are undeniably captivating. As mentioned earlier, Leo's memory loss is just one of several conflicts that you encounter, and it's handled cleverly. Throughout the game, you'll come across many bases that Leo set up around the world, but because of his amnesia, he doesn't know how to disarm their security systems. This disconnect turns these areas into dungeons, with even the treasure chests having their own security measures, creating a compelling link between the current Leo and his past self. Another key aspect of the story is the setting, which has multiple layers. When Leo first wakes up, he finds himself in the machine world, and uncovering the connection between this place and the traditional human world is crucial. This urgency comes from the Mecteria, an infection plaguing the human world and gradually making it uninhabitable. It's a dire situation, but on the bright side, Leo has a warp device his past self used. Ironically, it only teleports Leo and those nearby to places he remembers, so he essentially starts his quest from scratch. Unsurprisingly, Leo is probably my favorite character, but I also grew fond of Cheryl, the princess of a nearby kingdom. She's prideful, but not overly so, and it shows in humorous ways, such as her romantic feelings towards Leo leading to some memorable exchanges. Kina, the first party member who joins up, also stands out as an empathetic mage who doesn't know her origins but is always eager to help. Speaking of characters, Fantasian Neo Dimension occasionally shifts its perspective to scenes rich in backstory. These backstory-heavy scenes are presented in a novel-like way, where a narrator takes over while the character's voice actors still perform their lines, similar to an audiobook. While initially surprising, these scenes create a level of immersion that the rest of the game can't quite match, thanks to the unique combination of presentation and voice work.
I'm Leo.
Memories of the encounter.
I was walking through a forest. The rays of sun, the birds chirping, the beautiful scenery, like something from a painting, brought a smile to my face. The forest treasure.
I'm glad these instances are occasional, as it allows them to stand out way more. I was also pleasantly surprised by the gameplay. Fantasian Neo Dimension features an intuitive turn-based combat system centered around directional range. Simply put, certain attacks can curve around the battlefield or hit multiple enemies in a single turn, depending on the type, allowing for basic yet effective strategies. And some party members have unique abilities as well, like one who can craft items mid-battle for great benefits. And of course, you have magic, accessories that boost stats, and character-specific abilities learned at certain levels. Any RPG player will be familiar with these basic elements, but there's a convenient twist. You can perform attacks and other actions quickly using the left and right triggers. The left trigger for standard strikes, and the right trigger automatically repeats the last skill you used, like a cursor memory. You still have traditional menus to navigate, but this small addition makes battles flow faster without overcomplicating things. Battles are pretty addicting, and I rarely grew tired of them thanks to another mechanic, the Dimengion. As in classic RPGs, you encounter enemies randomly while exploring areas, but this is a mostly targetable option. Early in the game, Leo recovers a machine that stores encountered enemies in an alternate dimension called the Dimengion. This feature lets you explore maps at your leisure without being interrupted by foes, which is a much appreciated convenience. However, the Dimengion isn't perfect. The device has limited capacity and won't work on enemies that you haven't faced yet, so you must decide whether to have the Dimengion active to store up encounters and focus on exploration. Fortunately, you can disable this feature whenever you want, making it a flexible tool that fits your playstyle. Honestly, I'm surprised this mechanic hasn't become mainstream in turn-based games, since it's quite clever. The Dimension ultimately encourages player choice, but at a cost, which can be either beneficial or detrimental. Naturally, battling waves of enemies back-to-back up to an initial maximum of 30 is risky, but it's not as dangerous as you might think. Dimension battles include passive buffs that you can activate, making it easier to defeat the foes. Still, attempting this in a new area, especially late in the game against unfamiliar enemies, is not recommended. This brings me to another important topic, the difficulty. This updated release has an added normal mode, but out of curiosity, I chose the original difficulty level from the Apple Arcade release, which was hard. For those who don't know, Fantasian was originally released in 2 parts on Apple Arcade, and Neo Dimension merges both parts seamlessly. Although, to be honest, you can tell where the divide would have been based on the story developments. I heard that the second part of the game was much more challenging, and that's still true here. The first half of Fantasian is fairly approachable. No matter your RPG skill level, even on hard, you can get by with minimal strategy using the basic abilities of each character. It's not mindless, but it doesn't require complex decision making. However, the second half ramps up the challenge significantly, especially with the demanding boss battles. There are also new features like character-specific skill trees that weren't present in the first half. This increase in difficulty suited me well, as it happened when I was already familiar with all the aspects of the combat system. I knew how each returning character worked and which skills were most useful in specific situations. I'm not sure how normal mode plays, but hard is the way to go if you're looking for a genuine fair challenge. The boss battles alone are worth it. They're memorable and satisfying. Fantasian Neo Dimension also features a fair number of towns and similar locations where hidden items are plentiful, like in older RPGs. There are even locked treasure chests that require specific keys dropped by special monsters. This exploration aspect is enjoyable, but there are some related shortcomings. For example, the side quests are usually forgettable and often feel like they were just added just to be there. They aren't terrible, but they tend to offer lukewarm rewards and lack compelling content, making them not worth the time or effort. The treasure chests you can find are more likely to give you useful rewards, like better equipment. Another downside is the performance. On the Switch at least, Fantasian Neo Dimension can be a little choppy and somewhat unpleasant to play, especially when docked. It never felt unplayable, but the dropped frame rates can make the already simple models and environments look worse than they probably should. Additionally, Fantasian Neo Dimension uses dioramas for every location, creating an experimental presentation that still feels familiar within the genre. However, navigation can somewhat be awkward. When you're moving to another side of the diorama, Leo's directional input doesn't adjust to the change, so even if you're holding right, he continues running in whatever direction the diorama shifts. This means you'll have to let go of the control stick for the moment to regain your bearings. It's a minor annoyance, but it was noticeable throughout my playtime. One last feature worth mentioning is the soundtrack. Although it's not too extensive, this composition led by Nobuo Uematsu is masterful, providing some of my favorite town, battle, and event themes from his work. This is apparently the last game Uematsu has fully composed for, and if that's true, it's a solid note to end on.
You were a messy, messy boy. This simply will not do at all.
Yeah, it's a total wreck. Let us help you clean.
Is now really the time?
Routine maintenance.
You're the best.
Darkness, aid me!
Hammer!
Requesting a debug.
In an age when countless projects have tried to recapture the magic of older RPGs, even successfully at times, Fantasian Neo Dimension stands out as an authentic success from a veteran who hasn't lost his touch. With its engrossing narrative, fantastic combat, and well-developed cast enhanced by the outstanding English dub, this is an absolute must-play for turn-based RPG enthusiasts. Hopefully, Fantasian Neo Dimension will put Mistwalker on the map for a wider audience and lead to ports of the studio's classic titles, notably the Blue Dragon games, Lost Odyssey, and The Last Story. Noisy Pixel is giving Fantasian Neo Dimension a 9 out of 10. Thanks for watching. This video is brought to you by our supporters on Patreon. Noisy Pixel is run by a group of gamers providing independent gaming coverage through news, reviews, previews, and more. Check out our Patreon to help support our continued growth, and subscribe to keep up with all our future content.
Noisy Pixel.